In the last segment, I cut the bowl off of the plastic bat with the wire, and the plastic bat was mounted on the wheel head with this bolts so that I could remove the bowl without having to touch the bowl. That's the advantage of the plastic bats. Then I took the plastic bat and the bowl into the damp room, and I left it there for enough time that it's now what we call leather hard. So the clay is in a condition that's stiff enough to hold its shape, but still malleable enough to trim using this pear tool. That's what we call the trimming tool. I don't know, originally it was used for trimming pears, I guess. We will not be using the plaster bat now on the wheel head. We want it bare because there's concentric rings scored into the metal of the wheel head that we're going to use like a target. Now look at my body and notice that when I'm doing this part, my head's straight over the top of the wheel head, so I can look down over it and center the bowl inside like a bullseye on those concentric rings. That gets me very close to centered right from the start. Now there might be some subtle variations because maybe the rim's wobbly or the bottom of the bowl was removed wobbly. We're going to ignore the bottom, the very bottom and the rim, and we're going to put our finger a third of the way down from where you see my finger. And if it's touching my finger in any one spot as it turns, that's where I need to stop and push the bowl away slightly, start again, and just keep doing that process until I'm going to call it the lower third, until the lower third of the bowl is touching my finger in two places. It's like beep, 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 like that. That's as centered as it needs to be. Next, I need to put little clay tabs on the wheel head to keep the bowl affixed while I'm trimming. So this is I'm going to call this cigar-sized piece of clay. And instead of pushing it into the bowl, I'm going to push it down on the wheel head while I'm holding the bowl in place. So I've got my left hand on the bowl, and I'm using my right thumb pushing straight down to mount these support tabs. You can use 3 or 4 of these. Today I'm going to use 3. The clay, if this clay that you're using for this support is too wet, it'll stick to the bowl. If this clay is too dry, it won't stick to the wheel head. So it's got to be the same consistency as the clay was that you were throwing with. So I'm going to keep my hand on the bowl as I push downward on the clay tabs. Now, if I did that right, this should be just as centered as it was before I applied the tabs. Now, the next thing I'm going to need to do is trim away the clay that's in the way. So the tool has a big curve and a wide curve and a narrow curve. I'm going to use the wide curve for carving the clay out of the way. Now, notice that the handle of the tool is just like the hands of a clock, coming straight out from the center. I'm tilting it downward this way so that I can get the other angle that's important, which is 30 degrees to the clay. So here's the bowl, here's the tool. I'm turning it at a 30-degree angle. Next thing I do is put my right hand on the splash pan and steady it with my other hand, so that when I'm applying pressure, I'm not allowing the clay, I'm not allowing the bowl to move the tool. I'm keeping the tool motionless so that it carves away some clay. Now, beginners tend to be very timid about this step. And they'll just hold the tool there and just microscopic amounts of clay will be coming off, and that's essentially just a waste of your time and energy. So you'll know if you're making a difference, if you're making progress, if pieces of clay like this keep flying off. So you can visibly see if what you're doing is having an effect. Now, if I just hold the tool in one place, the shape of the foot is going to be the shape of this tool. That's not what we're up to. So that means you need to be moving the tool up and down the contour of the bowl as you're trimming away the unwanted clay. So if you'll notice, I'm slowly moving the tool up and down the contour of the bowl. And what I'm trying to visualize is a dome shape. So there's a continuous curve of the dome on the outside that mirrors the continuous curve of the dome on the inside you saw in the last segment. The question in every beginner's mind is, how do I know how much to take away to make a foot? I have these before and after cross sections that I've kept from a previous class. This is what the bowl looks like in a cross section before the support clay has been trimmed away. So there's this big thick part here, and then a thin part where the walls are. What we're going to do is carve away a lot of that unwanted clay and create what I call an insert. So the insert is the inside of the foot. So what we'll want in the end is a continuous curve from rim to rim with no interruptions or no thicknesses and thinnesses in the walls of the clay, with a foot that elevates it off the table. So right now, at this stage, I've carved away most of the unwanted clay in this section of the bowl using the big curve of the tool. It's the most efficient for doing that. Now it's time to flip the tool around and use this narrow side to create a more abrupt step between the foot and the bowl. So if you can see, I've kept the angle of the tool handle like a clock, like the hands of a clock, and I'm at 4 o'clock. I'm holding the tool in a position of 4 o'clock. I've got this angle in relation to the clay at 30 degrees, just like before, only now I've got the tool tilted downward so that I can get it up under there so that you'll know if you've got a tall enough foot is if you can take your fingertips and grip it like that. Now that's created some unwanted detail in the process, so I'm going to flip the tool back over to the large curve and settle that down. So now I've got this continuous dome shape. It's time to do the insert. So I'm going to use the narrow end of the tool again. Notice that I've got my right hand is resting on my knee or the splash pan, and my left hand is supporting my right hand so that I'm holding the tool still as I start the insert. So I want the thickness of the foot to be the same thickness as the bowl. So that's the first thing that I'm determining. Now I'm just going to continue moving my tool inward toward the center to remove the clay for the insert. Now, if I don't want throwing information, I'll need to put my tool down flat to edit that unwanted detail. But some glazes are actually look better when there is trimming information. So I'm going to leave this information, I'm going to leave this visual rhythm on the bowl. Now, the last touch is to add a little bevel right here so that there's not a sharp edge on the foot. And I can actually use my fingertips to burnish that smooth so that it's not a rough surface when you're using it in your kitchen. Now, the next thing you'll be doing is signing your name. I use a dull pencil to do that. In the beginning, all of the bowls are going to look alike. So labeling your artwork on the bottom of the bowl is a really important step before you put your bowl on the greenware shelf. So what I've discovered over time is if I don't tell people what not to do, they'll do it. So there's a needle tool in your kit. You will not be using the needle tool to sign your artwork because it makes a mark that's so small and fine that the glaze covers it over, and you won't be able to, we won't be able to see your signature. So I'm going to use either a dull pencil or the point of a ballpoint pen to sign my name. Now, initials aren't a good idea because there may be more than one CT in the classroom. So it needs to be a shortened version of my name, or if my name is like 3 or 4 letters, that'll work much better. So maybe your first initial in your last name, or something like that. Just initial with 2 letters is not going to do it. And it needs to be really definitive. I mean, sign it like you mean it so that we can see whose it is. Now I'm going to remove the little clay tabs that were holding it to the wheel head. And when I'm carrying greenware, greenware means it hasn't been fired yet. Greenware is the most vulnerable when it's bone dry. So when you're handling greenware, you want to cradle it like you see I'm doing with 2 hands. Avoid grabbing the clay at the rim and picking it up, because if you do it that way, all you're going to get is the rim, and you'll have to start over. So you will not be doing that so that you won't be getting this result.